Hello and welcome to Podcraft. This is the show about podcasting from planning and launch to growth and monetization and everything in between. I'm Matthew and joined on this episode by Jacob. How you doing, Jacob?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, life after Colin. Here we are. The boss is gone. That's why we're drinking, and it's only 22:11 in the morning. Hope the new boss doesn't hear this, but...
No, I'm sure he likes wine too. It's fine. Actually, if you put it in your coffee cup, no one knows.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It's the brown paper bag of the modern digital era. So on this episode, we want to continue a theme that I've really been enjoying, where we've been talking through statements in podcasting and just basically saying whether we agree or disagree with them, and then getting into our positions on these respective points of view, I guess. So not to put you on the spot, Jacob, have you heard any of these episodes recently?
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. I listened to one with Colin a few episodes back that was similar, but it was underrated, overrated. I quite enjoyed that one.
Good. Well, let's get straight into it with the first statement I've got down here, which is you should plan at least 10 episodes before launching your podcast. Do you agree or disagree with that, Jacob?
I'm going to go with disagree as someone who chronically overplans as a form of procrastination. I think that, well, I mean, for some people, perhaps I think that could be good, but for people who are like me, I feel like that's probably just a license to not actually get to recording, and just put all their chips into planning. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to, I can't disagree with what you're saying there, but I am going to agree with this statement based on the fact that I know, all planning isn't the same. And I don't think here that I would advise thoroughly planning each episode, but I would certainly recommend that a listener, a creator of a new podcast has 10 episode titles in mind, or 10 rough ideas of what they're talking about. So yeah, they don't necessarily have to plan out those episodes, but I think a minimum expectation is just that, you have 10 episode titles, and that gives you a little hint. Okay, there's legs here. There's things for me to kind of talk about for the next few months.
Yeah, that does make sense. To be fair, you've got a little bit of a roadmap ahead of you. You're not just immediately after an episode or two launching into I've run out of ideas already. Yeah. No, in my head, I guess I was thinking a full sort of episode plan for those 10 episodes, and that does feel too far. But yeah, I think you're right. Having 10 episode titles or more, so easy to come up. Ideas are cheap these days, right? With AI
exactly.
and this kind of thing. So 10 good ideas that you've kind of picked, and you think, yeah, I could record these would fit well. The listeners that I'm trying to target will get some value from these. That does feel quite valuable. So maybe I'll change my answer on that basis.
Don't let me convince you. So the 10 kind of episode title ideas, that's something that we could get from the Alitu show planner as well, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Aye. Alitu show planner will help you with all the things you need to do up front, really. Defining who your audience is, picking out your topics, coming up with those episode title ideas, clearly defining your audience so that you have a good picture of who they are and how you might make them happy and want to listen. And also help you find something that will make it unique, that will not just, it'll help you stand out a bit from other podcasts in similar areas. And it'll even help you kind of come up with a name if you haven't got one already. And I'll put that all neatly together into a little plan that you can download, print out if you want, have it in front of you. But yeah, just importantly, it'll help you kind of go from that rough idea in your head to something that's on paper and ready for you to work on with absolutely no excuses for procrastination. So very much for people like me.
What's the URL for the show planner? I'll stick it in the show notes as well.
It's planner.alitu.com.
Grand. Yeah, I'll pop that in there. The listener could get a wee look at it. Yeah, it's a great tool. Brilliant. So on our next statement then, I think we pretty much said all there is to say about that one. But next one is podcasting should never feel like hard work. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I disagree. I think even if it's something that no matter what you're doing, even if it's something you really enjoy, it's something you're passionate about, it's something that, you'd want to spend a lot of time on. I think fun work should still be hard work. I think you're always gonna need a bit of grit. And if you try and stay in the lane of, I only want this to be fun, then I don't know. I think maybe you're cheating yourself out of your potential a little bit, I guess would be how I'd put that. Like you still need to push yourself, especially like if you are like kind of more uncomfortable in certain areas, you might want to push outside your comfort zone, and that will feel like work. So I think, it is going to be hard work. And I think you're probably, well, from my limited experience from podcasting, it is hard work. You will need to push yourself. But it's very, very rewarding, especially if your topic and what it is that you're doing is something that you're quite passionate about.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying there. And yeah, podcasting should never feel like hard work is something that I disagree with. I think there's certain factors or aspects of podcasting that shouldn't be hard or shouldn't be as hard as they maybe are at times. But yeah, I mean, what things in life that are worth doing don't come at some, don't take some sort of challenge or, hard work to overcome. Like to get good at something, to become competent, like there are going to be times where you're going to have to put the work in, and it's going to be hard. That doesn't also mean it can't be enjoyable. Like you can get enjoyable hard work. Doesn't mean it has to be a slog. But yeah, there's no getting around it. There's sometimes you're just going to have to get the head down and kind of put the work in. Otherwise, if that wasn't true, everyone in the world would have a multi-million download podcast, wouldn't they? So it would be easy. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a kind of good way to look at it. You look around you and you look at the most successful shows in your category, and you can bet that they have put in the work. So generally, like if you want to get to the same place they are, you're going to put in an equal amount of work, right? Just make sure that the hard parts you also enjoy. Like I feel like some things should feel kind of easy. Like it should feel, well, I mean, that's a good question. Like what parts of it do you think should feel easy? Should it come natural to you to just come up with topics, to sit down and record? Like, what parts do you personally find that are like the hard work, and what is it that you could kind of do in your sleep?
Yeah, starting at the things that I don't think should be too hard and get in the way are things like editing and tools and software. I think that those should just serve the purpose. They're not the end goal. They should just blend into the background and let the podcaster get on with the things that really move the needle. I think where the hard but enjoyable work should come in is really figuring out how you're positioning yourself to serve your audience, how you're creating value, how you're building community, how you're honing your skills as a podcaster, being able to have a conversation, being able to do an interview where you really are listening to what the person's saying to you, and you're being able to pick up on threads and take the conversation forward. These are all hard-won skills. I still feel like I'm trying to win them myself, and that's after like 16 years of podcasting. So these things, they take a lot of time to get good at. And you're always improving as well. And like I say, it's not a slog, it's not a grind, but it's hard work. And you have to put the work into it. So
yeah.
All right then. Now that we've put that to bed, here's another one for you, Jacob. The narrower the niche, the better. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I'm going to give a totally non-committal answer and say it depends on what your goals are. Right? Because if your goal is to sell your wooden clogs to this small amount of people that are really into wooden clogs, then the narrower that niche, the better. You don't want to target everyone who's interested in shoes, for example, right? Terrible example, but in that case, the narrower the niche is, the better. If that's your goal. But if your goal is maybe a little bit kind of looser than that, and it's to sort of build a personal brand for yourself, or kind of become known and for what you do and these sorts of things, then actually you probably don't want a really, really, really narrow niche. You probably want to kind of come up a few levels from that. So I think it does depend on what your goals are. But I think the smaller the group that you can target, probably the better, because it makes it easier to find them. It makes it easier to kind of get a closer connection with them. Like if you can quite happily sit down and find a community online or go on social media and find people that would enjoy your show, because your niche is that narrow and well defined, then that's a great thing. But yeah, it does kind of depend a bit, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, obviously with niches, there's usually, like, you've got a broad overall topic, health or whatever, and then you go into that, we're going to talk about a certain type of diet that you've niched down a wee bit, but then you niche down again, we're going to talk about this certain type of diet for this certain type of person, a single parent on a budget or that. And then you could maybe then go in once more and say, and they're in their 40s, but I think that's the point where you're like, okay, but no further. You've got to know when to call that, maybe pull it back a wee bit. So yeah, you could go too far with a niche, but I think certainly looking at the broad topic, a lot of the broad topics you could probably drop down into two levels and find a niche there. But yeah, you've got to be careful about it, because yeah, you're narrowing the audience, but those people really feel like you're speaking to them. But you could go too far and literally have 5 people that you're speaking to. So do you think there's with niches, what do you think the difference is when we think of a niche? You've got like the demographic as a niche, and then you've got like the psychographic as a niche. I suppose that's a consideration there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, my job, I'm a marketer. Like on paper, everything I do should be about demographics and psychographics. But I think to a degree, a lot of it's kind of overblown because what you really should care about is what problem does the listener have, and it's as simple as that. It doesn't really matter what they look like or what they do in the morning or what their routine is or like, how many brothers and sisters they have. The most important thing is that everyone who's listening to you has the same problem. So I think that's probably a kind of better thing to focus on, and I think it makes it a bit easier to find people today as well, because we've organized ourselves into kind of tribes and communities and follow this page, follow this subreddit, this sort of thing. I think it's actually it's actually easier to find people and target people by if you just think in much simpler terms like that. I mean, like one thing though is, question for you on your experience, like if you start in a niche, are you always contained to that niche, do you think, as a podcaster? Can you, like you're saying, drill down a couple of levels? Can you, if you feel like you've hit the max of your niche that you start out with, can you kind of go up a level, go a little bit broader? You're still broadly kind of solving the same problem for people, whatever it is, but you're just kind of widening the scope a little bit of what you're talking about. Like, for example, do you think Podcraft, it's for people who make content, but specifically for people who make podcasts? Do you think there is a way that Podcraft could come up a level from that and talk more broadly about just making content? Still talking about podcasting, but how would that work? Or are you, once you've drilled down, is that kind of where you should stay? Are you thinking about then starting multiple shows for different niches if that's what you want to do? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess it's almost a question of framing. Like the buzzword is probably pivot, isn't it? We wouldn't say we're niching back out. We would say we're pivoting. So you and I run a podcast about 90s cartoons, and then we find ourselves talking a lot about the Sega Mega Drive because that was around then. But that's not part of the podcast. But, it turns out that really resonates with the listeners, and we say, you know what, we wouldn't say we're going to niche out and also talk about the Mega Drive. We would probably more say we're pivoting. So, yeah, I guess, yeah, that'll happen a lot with podcasts, I imagine. Often the presenter starts with the subject they think they want to cover and they think the audience wants, and it almost works, but it turns out it just needs reframed slightly. And I don't think that's a disaster. I think it's a happy accident, if nothing else. To paraphrase, was it Bob Ross? Happy accident. So, yeah. Aye, no, that's an interesting one though. And yeah, certainly a lot of nuance to that as well, isn't it? As much as it's an agree or disagree. You sat on the fence and I didn't even answer it.
Hi, oh, come on, no, you can't get away with that.
Okay, I agree. I'll say, if I've got to pick one, I'll say I agree. Yeah, because
Nice.
I trust that the listener is sensible enough not to go too daft with it. So,
yeah.
All right, then next one for us is audiograms still work in 2026. Do you agree or disagree with that?
100% disagree. I think they're awful. I honestly cannot tell you the last time I actually stopped to watch an audiogram. Like, I don't know. There's something about an audiogram. When I see an audiogram, for me, it's normally coming up on YouTube Shorts. That's where I do my that's where my short form and video addiction is. And if I want to listen to an audiogram, generally I want to have my phone in my pocket, and I just can't. Do you know what I mean? It's going to scroll itself. Can't close YouTube. Refuse to give Google money for it. So I don't have the background playing thing. And if I'm currently getting my dopamine from scrolling through like moving pictures, a little moving line just isn't quite hitting the same. And whether I want it or not, my thumb is gonna like twitch to go to the next video. That's it. Like I think I just don't think they're useful, helpful. I've never seen anything get good engagement. Like, and that's maybe a slightly hot take, but I think they're a waste of time. And I personally don't get anything out of them whatsoever. I don't know. I feel bad saying that because I think a lot of people do make them and put them out, but yeah, I don't know. They don't do it for me. So I'm not sitting on the fence on that one.
Yeah, you've added a lot of context there to my answer and my thought process around this, because I was going to say I agree, and I still do under certain criteria. I agree that audiograms could still be useful. If we think about, and again, it's a question of, is this an audiogram? But if you upload your full episodes onto YouTube, and there's lots of data out there about podcast consumption on YouTube, and just basically a lot of people are doing it away from the screen. And I know there's that thing about, if your screen goes off on your phone and all that, but I'm guessing a lot of folks, maybe whether it's using their TV or their laptop, they'll stick a podcast on YouTube and they'll be pottering about the house, whether they've got headphones in or not, I don't know. But so they're away from the screen. So it doesn't really matter what the video, quote unquote video, is shown, whether that's, again, you could refer to these as static image videos or audiograms. I don't know if it becomes an audiogram just the minute the squiggly line appears or there's some subtitles or whatever. But so that was the reason that I would say there still is a place. But I totally get, like, if you're looking at short form content, and this isn't a world, I'm remotely familiar with, scrolling through any social media feeds. But yeah, I would imagine they're pretty redundant in that world now, like you've said. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I think possibly it could still work. I mean, I went straight to short form video, but maybe that's a bit of a mistake on my part, because I think there probably is still some value in taking your audio recording, running it through something to give you an audiogram, and uploading the full episode to YouTube or wherever. That is still probably helping your reach in some way, and it's a small amount of work. But yeah, I think specifically audiograms for short form video, for me, I don't think it's helping. Yeah.
All right. I don't think there's too much more to say about that. Then we'll move on to another wee statement. It's okay if your first 3 episodes sound bad. Do you agree or disagree with that one?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much gonna, and if you tell yourself they can't, they might never see the light of day. And that has actually happened to me. I started a podcast with some friends called Health Theatre, and it wasn't a grand concept or anything like that. We just wanted to watch movies together and review them. And it was fun because we do that anyway. We'll watch movies. We sit around for about 50 minutes talking about it ad nauseum. And then we just kind of decided, well, why don't we just record this and make a podcast out of it? It was something that was already fun. And we this up so badly that we stopped watching movies together for like a year or two. We started recording it and started overanalyzing it and just like trying too hard and trying to make it better than, just meet that imaginary bar in our head. But had we have actually literally just stuck an iPhone on record in a room and thrown those 3 episodes up, or thrown up those conversations as episodes, we very well might still be doing it. But yeah, we ruined something that was already like decent and entertaining, at least for us, and that's all that really mattered to us at the time, by trying to make it sound good. So I think on that basis, it is completely okay, and in fact encouraged, that your first 3 episodes sound bad, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a thing you've got to get done. You've got to go through the process. And also, bad's a very subjective term, and there's so many spectrums of this. Like what sounds bad for somebody who's already published 100 episodes is different for somebody publishing their first episode. Your first episode is never going to sound great compared to folks who've been doing it for years, but it could be a very good first episode based on the fact you've never done this before. It still doesn't mean that when you listen back 10 years later, you're not going to think, oh, Christ, listen to me. But you've just got to get it done. You've just got to kind of leave those fears at the door and push on. There's no other way. There's no way through, but no way round but through. That's the saying, isn't it? From Fallout. So, but yeah, you're right. If you wait to try and make something perfect, you could forget it. You're just never going to get anything launched, and that's the end of it. So
yeah, 100%. It's 100% more valuable if you've got an audio file to put up on a feed. It doesn't really matter what's in it as long as your voice is in it. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I mean you could always get rid of those episodes later. A year later, you maybe tidy up your feed and just say, you know what, those first 3, they could go.
Yeah. I mean, every massive YouTube channel has its first 50 videos hidden. Do you know what I mean? Like all of them have hidden the first videos, or they're unlisted, and you kind of come across them sometimes. Someone's linked them in some forum thread, and you're like, oh my God, how did this end up here? I think it's the same in everything. You just need to do it and not care too much. Maybe not fall into the trap of thinking you're going to get hundreds and thousands of listeners either, because realistically, those first 3 episodes, unless you've got a pre-existing audience, you're not talking about showing your crappy work to lots of people here. It's probably going to be your friends and family, and that's totally fine. And that's how it should be. So yeah, it's just about getting the start.
Yeah, and that's a good point about downloads or audience size too, because there are podcasters who, they maybe don't have that fear about sounding bad. They're maybe quite far the other way, in that they're very confidently enthusiastic, and they put out their first episode, which, in fairness to them, they're very proud of, and they want the whole world to hear that. And I've always encouraged slight caution on that. It's not that you don't want to promote the thing, but you're better just working on what's next rather than trying to get, if you get too many listeners at this point, maybe it's just not good enough to capture a good chunk of them. So yeah, one foot in front of the other and all that. We have to talk about Spotify. Here's one mentioning Spotify. You might as well host on Spotify. It's free. What do you think of that? Do you agree or disagree with that one?
Always in favor of more channels, and I mean Spotify are kind of their own ecosystem at this point, aren't they? Really? So, I would say you might as well host on Spotify, but you probably want to host elsewhere too. There are other. Yeah.
So I'll give you clarity on that. I was talking about literally hosting there, not publishing or distributing your show there, but like literally using them as your podcast host as you would Buzzsprout.
All right. So, you're educating me then. Can you get an RSS feed from Spotify?
Yeah. You could host there. Yeah.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
And it's free. So obviously when you publish there, you're in Spotify, and they I wouldn't say they hide it, but they're not exactly like encouraging you to go and submit to Apple and everywhere else, although they do let you. So
yeah. Oh, okay. Well, what are the downsides? You tell me.
So it's a good question. Like, it's one of the few free hosting providers out there. One, I guess, like, we'll get to this, but like, if I was going to host for free, I would use RSS.com, who recently created their hosting tier. That said, I've used, I'm a paying customer now, but I'm on Red Circle with one of my shows, and I started there for free. And I think they have a free tier, but you have to really like search their site to find it. But anyway, that's by the by. Like, are there any downsides to hosting on Spotify? Not blatantly, but a couple of concerns that I have about it is, well, first and foremost, there is that whole thing, and this doesn't just apply to Spotify, but if you're using something for free, they say you're the product, don't they, rather than the customer. And they're such a big company, and they've done things on a whim before, that it's one of them, like, who's to say what could happen in Spotify? What could happen to your show? I've heard the show's been taken down on Spotify with no explanation, or, no way for the podcaster to get in touch or speak to somebody and say, like, what's happened to my podcast? So I think I trust smaller, more involved companies a lot more. Like, I trust that if I was even using RSS or Red Circle for free and something happened, I trust that I would be able to speak to them pretty quickly. And, I know the people and could maybe expect a resolution. So there's that. It just, like, when you get to a company of Spotify's size, it's just a bit like, what's going on behind those walls? I don't really know. So I don't think it's a bad thing to host there. I wouldn't do it myself, is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, my concern would be, how easily am I going to be able to talk to someone if my show does get taken down randomly or something like that? Yeah, that's normally the problem with a bigger company like that offering a free product. You're not going to get to talk to anyone if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, with a company like RSS.com or Red Circle or even Alitu's included hosting, you will get to talk to a support agent of some sort. You will be able to get help. So yeah. On the other hand, I bet their analytics are great. Last time I looked, they had great analytics. Mostly just covering Spotify, right? It's not going to work for anywhere else that you submit your feed. But
well, you're right. You're right on that point. But you get your Spotify analytics even if you don't host there. Like, if you're listed in Spotify and you log into Spotify for creators, your analytics are pretty much just as good as if you were publishing there. So,
all right, okay, yeah, no, sack Spotify then. Go host somewhere else that's equally free, because you're not then beholden to their ecosystem, and you will get someone to talk to. Like, yeah, definitely go try out RSS.com. That's what I would say.
And even just for those, like, they're not small touches by any means to somebody like me, but when you upload to an RSS.com or Red Circle, wherever, they're really all about, like, okay, your show's published, here's where to put it. Whereas I feel with Spotify, they're like, your show's published, great, share it on Spotify. And then you're like, could I publish that anywhere else? And they're like, yeah, I suppose. Like, if you go over here, you could do that. But, forget about that. Like, you have to, you have to untick a box that, like, turns on your RSS feed. And there's a whole bunch of wee things that I feel are just a bit petty. That don't sit right with me. So again, if you host on Spotify, fine, you're getting the job done. It'll probably be all right. It's just, if I was starting afresh, I would go elsewhere. So
struggling to find any pros.
Gets the job done.
Yeah, it exists. It's there.
Yeah. All right then. Moving on from Spotify, here's another one for you. Short episodes perform better than longer episodes. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I'm going to agree, but just because that's been my experience. Some of the best performing episodes that I had on Creatorcraft, the show about kind of wider content, marketing, content creation I did with Colin before his untimely demise, was R.I.P.
He is alive and well, in case anyone's
was the best performing episodes of that were solo episodes that I did that were about 10 minutes long, and I expected these were just like fillers because Colin wasn't available, he was busy doing this or that. We'd normally do kind of co-hosted episodes or some interview style episodes as well, and they did great. I don't know if it was just the topics, but they felt really easy to make. They were quite fun to make. I just sort of imagined I was talking at someone, if you know what I mean, like right to them, and yeah, they did well, and they were short, and they felt easy to do. So just based on my pretty limited experience, I think I have to agree. What about you?
So let me just view the statement again. So shorter episodes perform better. Based on my own, well, let me give you my answer first. I disagree is my short answer. My longer answer, firstly on my own data, I don't have any data that like showed shorter episodes necessarily doing better than longer. Like if I look at my completion data across Apple Podcast Connect and Spotify and that, it was a lot more topic dependent, and it came down to things like, you know, narrative fiction that was an ongoing story. The completion rates were superb. That was always different for you know, self-contained topics in the non-fiction realm.
Yeah.
But I never saw any patterns that related to length. I do remember when Rob Walsh was at Libsyn, he used to give a lot of interesting data, and he talked, and this is potentially going back 5 years now, but I don't expect it really would have changed. He analysed all the top podcast episodes, and you know, he found that the average time for these like top of the top episodes were all over an hour. That didn't necessarily suggest that if you go long, your episode will do better, but what it did suggest was there's no problem in podcasting going long if it fits the conversation. So yeah, ultimately, as we've said many times before, like when you think about your own episode lengths, they should be dictated by the content rather than any like presupposed, you know, I need to hit an hour or it needs to be 20 minutes. Like if we had a really good chat for half an hour, really value packed chat, where's the benefit in cutting 10 minutes of that off? Or likewise, you know, if we've said all we need to say in 40 minutes, but the show, you know, I feel the show should run for an hour, what's the point in just rambling for another 20 minutes? And then if you do have those situations where like we've talked for like 2.5 hours, but it's been really good stuff, I could always, if I feel more comfortable about it, I could just split that and make it a 2-parter. So I really don't think, as much as it's good to have an overall consistency, I don't think podcasters should come to the table with a set time. It's not like the news is coming on at the hour or that. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, and you have to remember as well, like we've all got a kind of a stack of podcasts usually that we're subscribed to, right? So we've got a bunch of things that have come out today or this week that we're waiting to listen to, and I don't know about you, but I'll just pick whatever suits the amount of time I've got, you know, and I'll quite happily sit down and listen to something that's 2 hours long, depending on what it is. And actually, weirdly enough, for me personally, I tend to avoid ones that are too short, like sub 10 minutes, because I feel like I'm not going to be able to get into whatever it is that they're talking about. I'd rather listen to this, you know, 20-30 minute one, but that's just me. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. It's maybe just another thing that you can overthink a bit.
Yeah, and a lot of kind of anecdotes that used to get floated with stuff around average commute times and that. And really, I think the way your tech works these days, like, you know, I might be listening to something in the car and then get home and, you know, walk into the house and I could continue listening to that like on a speaker or whatever, like, or your headphones, or it's not like I'm away from the podcast machine now and I can't get back to it. And then when I do get back to it, I'm going to have to start a new program. Like, you just pick up where you left off. So, aye. Yeah, definitely one for the overthinkers, that one. on to the next one I've got down here. Weekly publishing is unrealistic for most podcasters. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I'm going to say disagree, because even if you don't have a lot of time week to week, you can still kind of batch record, right? You can maybe set aside a few days at a push. Like if you're really busy with work, maybe you could even book a couple of days off and record, 4 hours, chop that up, and you've probably got enough episodes for maybe a month or two if you're lucky. So I'm going to disagree, because there are ways to get creative about it, even if you feel like you've not got the week to week time. What do you think?
Yeah, I disagree too. I think it's, and I know that there are always exceptions. There'll be somebody listening to this that if they put everything on the table, the schedules or obligations and that, it might be that, yeah, maybe weekly isn't right for you and you shouldn't overextend yourself to try and hit that. But I think for most people, it's doable without like overexertion. And I didn't get to this position myself without doing the groundwork. But if I look at my own show now, like some months I'll have a couple of completely new episodes, but I'll also run an episode from the archives, which is a few years old, which was a really good conversation at the time. I'll just republish that with a new intro because it's evergreen. And then I'll have one episode per month, which is a question of the month where it's all listener voicemails. So that there's very little work involved in putting that together. Everyone is doing the content for me on that. So really, that leaves me with just 2 weeks to record something completely new for a month's worth of content. And again, I didn't arrive at that position overnight. I had to do the groundwork to create that, but I am now in the position where like weekly is actually just 2 episodes a month for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of techniques. Obviously, batching is a very old and well talked about process where you just sit down and record. And this depends on your format, but yeah, theoretically you could sit down for a few hours and just bang out your month's worth of content in one go. And there's more to it than that, because that's a very tough thing to do, especially if you're new to podcasting. Like it's sometimes hard enough to get through one episode without trying to get through 4 in one go. But there's ways to do it, certainly.
Yeah,
so
definitely pretty daunting. And do you think, like, kind of like the episode length thing, do you think that's something that you can evolve and change over time? Like, could you start out doing it every 2 weeks and then move towards doing it weekly, or are you quite kind of set once you've started?
Yeah, I think it's totally malleable. Like, I don't think most listeners notice when shows they listen to miss a week or that. Like, there will be exceptions to that, but in the main, like most of the podcasts I keep up with, to be honest, if one didn't publish 1 week, I might fleetingly think about it, but there's so much out there now that it's unlikely the listener will be banging down your door. And maybe that's not necessarily a good thing, but yeah, you can adapt these things over time, and inevitably life will get in the way at some points. Even if you do weekly, you won't always manage that. One side note is when you do miss a week, inevitably don't then start your next episode with a long-winded explanation about why that happened, because like when that just becomes part of your back catalogue and somebody's binging your episodes and they're suddenly hearing this big apology about something that's completely irrelevant to them, they hadn't even noticed it, and it's just one of the things that's in your feed now. So
yeah, you're just drawing attention to it.
Yeah,
probably would never notice. Yeah. And then once you've been running for a while, you've got the privilege of a few years of a back catalogue. So if you really need to like take a week off, you can always just pull one from the archive.
Absolutely.
And call it a replay.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I like doing that because there's some really good chats I've had, and I know a lot of new listeners will binge the back catalogue, but a lot also don't. They'll just join you and they'll just keep going with your new stuff, and that's fine. But it's great to be able to bring the older conversations that are still as relevant as they were when you recorded them, put them And I do always redo the intro. I say, look, this is from 2022, but it was a great chat. This is what we talked about, and it's still relevant today, etc., etc. So, yeah, back catalogue, and there's so much more that you could do with the back catalogue too. Mm-hmm. It's not just a case of replaying something, but maybe, you know, there's 5 or 6 episodes that you covered a certain topic. You could chop them up and make a montage episode, or, you know, you could theme the content that way. There's a lot of opportunity in your back catalogue, and most podcasters, like, they don't dip into it and take advantage of it.
Yeah, they probably should. Nice.
All right. Time for one more then.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll go for this one then. Podcasting advice creators are part of the problem. I don't know what the problem is, but you agree or disagree with this, Jacob?
No, I don't think I do agree, but I do think that there is generally too much information out there, too much conflicting information. That's not necessarily the fault of the advice creators. You know, they are just trying to help you out, I guess, for the most part. But if you're the one looking for their advice, you probably want to find someone that you trust and identify with and follow their sort of full strand. Learn all you can from them, rather than trying to piece together conflicting information from different advice creators. Because I think that if you're like me and you will overthink it, you will just get lost in the weeds of, well, why don't they agree? They say they should do it this way. They say you should do it that way. They say this is important. They say they don't. And I think ultimately a lot of these things that you might end up sort of trying to juggle and find out what is the canonical truth here. You know, that's more of a hindrance than it is a help. So, you know, find someone like, I don't know, the podcast host in Podcraft, for example, who have the full sort of path of everything that you need to know about starting a podcast. And it doesn't have to be, you know, whatever it is, even outside of podcasts. And I think this applies, you know, find someone that you know and trust and that you can kind of vibe with a bit, and you appreciate the way that they do things and the way that they teach you, and just try and follow that in full, rather than, try to jump from creator to creator and maybe fool yourself into thinking you're going to get all of the best information when really you're probably just going to overwhelm yourself and end up with conflicting and confusing information.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, and it reminds me of, like, you know, I haplessly go to the gym, and over the years have listened to loads of different podcasts, you know, health and fitness gurus, strength coaches and stuff, and they're all, like, individually know their stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, if I'm listening to 5 or 6 different podcasts, I was getting, like, thrown about all over the place. I was getting whiplash because this guy says this lady says this, and you just don't really know what you're doing. So I think it's better just to have somebody, like you're saying, that you trust and you listen to, and they're your go-to person for what you're trying to achieve. And, you know, they could only give you so much anyway. Ultimately, you're going to learn by putting that into practice and doing it. That's where the real learning will come from. You know, folks could only really advise and teach, but they can't do it for you. But I think it is better to have fewer people that you're listening to for best practices and stuff like that. Otherwise, you're just swimming in information. And information, it's never been easier to just get info, has it? Like, I could open up Claude just now and ask it how to make a podcast, and it'll have a decent stab at telling me. So info's cheap. It's the action in it that's the real valuable part. But yeah, a massive part of that is just not being overwhelmed with what's next.
Yeah, it is completely in the execution and what you're going to actually do with that info. Never been a better time to suffer analysis paralysis.
That's been good. I think that's a good time to leave it. We've got more on the list for next time. What do you think of that format? Do you enjoy it?
I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, I like having opinions. I've got lots of them, so it's nice to have an official handy. Setting.
Yeah, I've heard the internet is a very good place for opinions.
Yeah, people love
it. Great stuff. I'll just give a wee shout out to our podcast maker tool, Alitu, as well. The best place to edit a podcast, isn't it? Would you agree or disagree with that, Jacob?
Oh, I would agree wholeheartedly.
Me too. Alitu's a podcast editor. I love the way that it cleans up and optimizes your audio. I've created some great sound samples and a couple of pieces of content in recent years, I was going to say. Well, it would be in the past year, I guess. Some of the noise reduction processes and some of the ways that it brings an off-mic recording, really reverberous sounding recording. It just brings you right on mic. So this is tech that I could have only dreamed of like 5 or 6 years ago. And that's, before you get to all the other features in there, the recording, the hosting and all the other little tools. So I would encourage the listener, if they've not done so already, to give it a wee try, free for 7 days at alitu.com, ALITU.com. They don't really say Alitu in American, do they? They say Alitu. So
they do indeed, yeah. But it is Alitu. Just learn it.
Great stuff, Jacob. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll get some more on this list for next time.
All right, looking forward to it. Cheers.
Cheers.